Welcome to episode 5 of the Entrepreneur's Journey. My name is Seth Falchif and I'm your podcast host here for Just Happy Marketing, your growth business partner. Today, we sit down with Romil Patel, a former investment banker turned entrepreneur. Romil has revolutionized the online pharmacy space here in the UK. And he sits down with us on this podcast to tell it all. We discuss topics from beyond the 9 to 5, identifying business opportunities, defining success, scaling strategies, partnerships, mentorships, biggest lessons learned, and much, much more. I began by asking Romil, what drove you to leave a secure corporate job and delve into the unknown world of entrepreneurship? This is what he says.
It's great working for yourself. It's great building your own thing. It's great running your own time. There's so many positives about it. It's just making sure that you have done your homework and whatever your idea is, you have interrogated it, you've been skeptical, maybe talk to other people, who may know something around it, checking out who are your competitors. Are you going to be better than them? Are you creating the same product? Have you got a different differentiator? There's, if you want to be successful, there has to be something a bit different about it. It's sometimes you can copy something and that can work out, but what you don't want to have is an idea which is just going to flop because you haven't really done the due diligence to make sure, you're covering all the bases in what could potentially go, right and wrong. So it's always just take your time, do your research. And if you feel confident about it, if you feel you can take the risk, then, the opportunity is there. I've always felt I can take the risk. Again, I'm not always right. You can do the work you want. Sometimes timing and markets can work against you. Some things are out of your control. And the important thing is that when you do things, not everything will go right. When I was told by some of the guys I used to work for, the very senior guys in mining, they would say the best time to start a company was when, things were bad. Because then you do things very tight controlled, you cost conscious, you build things with, without kind of just throwing cash everywhere. And when things do turn around, markets get better, the industry gets better perhaps, then the leverage you have in terms of your cost base and your, how you kind of scale the business in terms of profitability, it's already built in. So it's always good to, make sure you're doing things in a very efficient way. You are doing things very, very keenly, especially when you're starting up. That's one of the big things. It's, I came across a team of bankers from Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse, who'd started up a version of an online pharmacy in a very specific niche field. I won't name them, but they basically spent millions of pounds, barely launched, and they were spending money on very expensive consultants building the tech in America, very expensive PR agencies, and before they knew it, they'd run out of money, right? Because they weren't taking the approach of I'll kind of do it myself, or I'll do it in a this kind of, I don't want to say as cheap as you can because you want to do things well, but you've got to make sure that you're not over committing and you're not just taking the easy route in terms of, obviously, look, if I spend this there, then I'll get something. Because you can very quickly run out of money. And when you're doing the entrepreneurship game, you're in the startup game, every penny is key.
Speaking of online pharmacies, you're a founder of the first online B2B pharmacy marketplace in the UK. How did you come across this opportunity? How did you identify that?
So that came about through just kind of spotting a need, and it's very easy these days for people to see a need, but then not think of doing anything about it. It just kind of it's like a fleeting thought of, oh God, this is so difficult. I wish this was easier, and then you kind of move on in your life. But when basically when I came back from COVID from Canada and the oil company, obviously the only things that were open in the UK were pharmacies. My parents had their last pharmacy in their chain. And that's why I went in there to basically manage that through COVID and then sell it so they could retire. And whilst I was there, they had 400 different independent suppliers. It was a very big retail pharmacy. And every single one they would buy via, they'd call the rep up, they'd either fax them, they'd email them, they'd go to their website, the rep would come in store perhaps. So many different avenues to order from so many different suppliers. To me, it was just painful. So I just thought, well, wouldn't it be simple if everyone was in one place instead of all these suppliers saying, come and use my website, and you have hundreds of different logins and different places to buy things from. So I spoke to a tech guy that I knew, and he said, yep, that's something that can be built. It's a marketplace, essentially. And we started building it, got the suppliers on board, and it's grown to be, we've got 850 pharmacies on the site. We have all the kind of major suppliers in the pharmacy retail side. And, I kind of again priced it in a way that it's very difficult for someone else to come in. Mm-hmm. So it's got a barrier to entry just in terms of how the system is built and the suppliers that are on it and the pharmacies are on it. So that one came about from just seeing an opportunity. Then in terms of my other site, after that, I built Farmeci.com, which is Farmeci.com, so phonetic, and got heavily into the weight loss side of things. And that has come, so that's kind of it's more pharmaceutical, actually dispensing medication on a B2C basis. And that came about through networking. So that's your other opportunity, is that again, it wasn't my idea. It was someone else's. It was a young pharmacist guy who was haphazardly, he just kind of cobbled some online systems together, was selling weight loss medication before it was really a thing, sort of 2 or 3 years ago. And I met him, saw what he was doing. He was on my Farmeci site, buying some of the retail stuff. And I guess one of the areas where I come in is that just to make things, in terms of a business, you've got to make sure that kind of, employees, the technology, the HR, the legals, the tax, and everything kind of work. And it's more of a seamless process. And what he had was it was kind of a mess across a lot of different systems. And it was just a complete sort of mess in the pharmacy, and all these orders were coming in online. So I said to him, look, if I can build a system, I have a tech team in India, which I can develop from PharmaPlace, and we could build a really good, secure system that kind of meets all the regulatory angles. And we kind of agreed on that, spent a year building it, and we launched it, and that's how the other side of the business kind of developed. And, one of the big things I'd always say to every entrepreneur is networking is so important. Just even if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's kind of getting out and meeting people in the kind of the field you want. It's kind of it's going to people with your ideas, them coming to their ideas. And that's just another area where you can meet co-founders, for example. And it doesn't mean you're by yourself. So in the Farmeci.com business, I do have a co-founder. We have multiple sites. So it's not just Farmeci.com. There's my London Pharmacy.co.uk. We are launching lovelymeds.com in the USA. So that's launching this week, actually. And so that whole business just came about through meeting a guy, seeing what he was doing and seeing how I could add the value and coming to an agreement. With mentorships is always a great avenue. If you know someone, or you come across someone who has experience, has done this before, and you can pick their brain, there are always things you can learn. I mean, like obviously, Seth, I don't know where your viewers are, but for example, if they're in the UK, a lot of people here, they'll ignore the tax benefits you can claim. SCIS, you can start a company, you can get government approval for it, and for every pound an investor puts in, they get up to 50% back. They get tax breaks. If they don't make money, they get even more tax breaks, to the point where they can cover, I think it's about 73 pence in the pound of their investment if it goes wrong. And that suddenly gives you very simple fundraising avenues. But a lot of people don't know this. And when you come across mentors who have kind of done all this before, suddenly they can be throwing ideas at you. Even just business banking. I've got one lady in the sort of edutech field. just had a normal regular bank, wasn't really doing anything for her, and kind of gave her some advice as to a business banking application, which she makes she gets 5% interest on, right? Just really simple things like that. If it's sitting there, there's cash sitting there, do something with it. So it's always good to come across, if you come across people who are in the industry or have grown businesses, just pick their brain, use them as much as you can.
Sounds like networking is the way to do it, right?
It is. I mean, it's very difficult when you're an entrepreneur just to pool people together from your own network. Right? Not a lot of people who start up have that. You've got to get out there. And there's something I did a while ago. It was called Lunch Club. And again, some tech guy had tried to put loads of people together in terms of saying, look, would you like to have a meeting with someone random who's into entrepreneurship or into sales or into marketing? You kind of pick a whole lot of things, they'll match you with someone, and you'll just jump on a call and you'll talk. You go to, when I go to conferences or I go to trade shows, or it's, through, you meet one person, something that can open the door to several other people. So for example, I met one guy in sales and told him about what we're doing. And suddenly he thought, oh, there's these medical cannabis guys who have done this but need help. And suddenly we were put in touch with them, and now we have an option of doing a whole new medical cannabis business. So it's, the more you get yourself out there, the more opportunity there is to just come across people who can help you or opportunities. But it depends industry to industry, but it's just never keep yourself to yourself. That's the important thing. It's just talk to people, try to go to the relevant, like I said, conferences or trade shows, and, just try and get yourself out there.
Let's talk about success. How do you define success in your field?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's what I never really think of, because I think when you are an entrepreneur, you're kind of, every time you hit a milestone, you're thinking, okay, that's done. Now, what's next? Right? It's always what's next, because you're always kind of looking for more. So you're always never at the end of any journey.
So what motivates you, Rom?
I think I like to grow. So I think growth is what motivates me. Just seeing things get bigger and bigger and bigger. So we get more employees, we get more customers, more subscribers, more users. Just seeing that all increase, and basically all the hard work you do is leading to something. And I don't just mean obviously money, hopefully leading to something monetary as well, right? Because we all want to make some money from all of this. But just seeing the thing you've built grow, and people use it, and people hopefully like it and see the benefit from it, it motivates you. It motivates you to do, okay, well, what can I do next? How can I make this better? How can I, hit a new geography? And I guess that's the big thing we look at now, is just new geographies as well.
What advice would you give to people who are constantly hitting roadblocks and finding motivation difficult to ignite?
The problem is you should never be afraid to fail. It could be, look, maybe the business is slightly not in the right direction and you need to pivot a bit. Maybe, for example, the team isn't right, and you've got to take some drastic action. I mean, when I started Farmeci, I did it with one other guy. He worked for a big tech company, and after about 6 months, it became quite apparent he didn't have the time to commit to the business, and he was doing less and less, and it just wasn't an efficient partnership between us. And it was very tough, because at that point I didn't know too much about tech, and I basically had to have the hard discussion with him. I actually had to buy him out, which again was painful at the beginning. But you have to take the hard steps, because at that point, if you just leave it and try and roll on with what you have, and it's just not going to work, it'll only get worse, and the problem compounds itself. So it's, you've got to, if you're struggling with something, you're struggling with business, you're struggling with ideas, and you've got to hard look at yourself and say, okay, well, what is it that I can do to change this? Right? Does it need someone else to come in with some ideas or some help? Does it need a consultant to come in? Does it need a different partner? Does it need a pivot in the business from something to something else, right? It's in the business you have, like, what are the key factors which you think are going to make it successful? Identify those and then see, okay, well, how can I use this in a different way, perhaps? Right. So you've always got to be evaluating your business. It doesn't always work straight off the bat. Sometimes it does if you're lucky, but it's, the key is just to not get stuck in a rut, because once you're there, it becomes hard to come out and you kind of lose interest and suddenly you're thinking, why am I done all of this?
What about strategies or tactics that you found particularly effective for scaling businesses?
I think the biggest thing is, so obviously the internet, it's very competitive, right? It's when you're in a lucrative field, more and more people come in, prices go down, you're competing harder. Even when you're paying Google, for example, that PPC, that's going up. And over time, things just become very competitive on the internet. So we found that in online pharmacy in the UK. And the great thing about the internet is that it's global. So, we have something, we can take it to a different jurisdiction. We can look all around the world and say, okay, well, this place, this is a gap. So, we obviously, I think the thing that we really like about what we've done is the technology we've built that we can roll to any country, make changes to the site, the back end, the front end, and we can launch in anywhere we want, really. It just takes a lot of effort and hard work. That's the problem with everything. But again, if you can see an opportunity somewhere else, go do it. So that's why we're launching in the USA this week. We launched in the Middle East that had, its own issues. Kind of, we had to go on and off there. So again, sometimes you're going to learn from these things. And then we're going to look to launch in Brazil. So, the beauty about being on the internet or being online versus bricks and mortar is that bricks and mortar, you're stuck in your area. Online, you have the whole world at your disposal. So if you think you have something which works, there's always somewhere else you could potentially go.
What are the key lessons you've learned from your entrepreneurial journey so far?
There's always going to be something. So, don't take any knockback as, okay, this is it, I'm done. Just try and pick yourself up, learn from the failures. You rarely learn from your success stories because things generally go well, markets are well, it could be industry at the time as well. You learn a lot from your failures because then you can identify, okay, that I did wrong, or that was a wrong time, or that happened there. And then you can say in the future, okay, well, I just don't make those mistakes twice. That's the key thing. So you generally learn the most from when things go wrong.
And I guess it's important to have that awareness and humility as well, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's part of being an entrepreneur. Obvious big example, you look at Richard Branson. So many failures, but big successes, right? It's someone who's just not afraid in his early years to try and fail and try again.
And how do you see the online pharmacy market evolving in the UK particularly? What trends, challenges do you anticipate in the coming years?
Well, there's a general trend, which I kind of talked about, which is just competitiveness. There's constantly more online pharmacies coming on. A lot of bricks and mortar people are moving to the online as well. And obviously when people come on, everyone's bidding for that same airtime. They're bidding to get onto the search. They're bidding to have their site up first. They are trying to price competitive. And so prices just continually, obviously they're never going up. They're always going down because to the benefit of the consumer. But it's something which you have to be very careful of when you're a business owner. You can throw money at Google and PPC and all these things, but you've got to be very careful that you're making money from it. And it's obviously something Seth, very well, because you have your own metrics in terms of, if I spend X, I need to get Y. And it's very easy to get lost initially and spend loads of money, but you have to have the discipline there. And it's same right now. It's very competitive. Prices are reducing, but we try to have as much discipline as we can to make sure that we are sort of ahead of the game in that sense.
So how would you differentiate, your online pharmacy from the rest of it to stay ahead of the curve and keep being in it?
Funny enough, it's almost the opposite, because the more you are safer and regulatory compliant, the more you're making it harder for the purchaser, the less sometimes they want to use you, because it's easier getting it from someone who kind of dishes his stuff out.
So what do you do?
So it's very important. Obviously, trust is important. So obviously, we really do push hard on making sure that, our Trustpilot, our reviews, have people telling them that. Obviously, we try and give them great advice. We have our prescribers call our patients, talk to them, make them feel like they're getting added value. And obviously, as they kind of go through our flow on our site, it's just trying to explain why we're doing what we're doing. So that's why I'm saying it's tough, because the more regulation, the harder it gets. And you always have those players who aren't doing it or not doing it properly. But you're trying to stay ahead of the regulation and obviously grow your business. So it's a fine balance where you have to be commercial in some senses, and other senses just you've got to make sure you follow the letter of the law. But it's, again, if you can give the added value, people with you and they feel like, look, I want to stay with these guys because they are doing things properly and they're making sure my health is paramount. That, if suddenly I develop this, they'll kind of see it. For example, if they had gallstones and they tell us and we say, okay, look, you shouldn't have this anymore because of X and Y reason, you're protecting their own health. So it's, we do as much as we can, and then it really comes up to the consumer as to what they feel is best.
What is the biggest piece of advice that you've received as an entrepreneur? Something that's amazing, you blow people out of the water.
Oh, goodness. Look, I think the biggest thing is to push yourself. And that kind of sounds like an easy bit of advice, right? It doesn't sound impressive at all. But there is so much in the business which you need to do. Because when you're starting a business, you kind of need to know a bit about the structuring, the tax, the law, the tech, just all aspects of your business. Learn it. When I started up, I read books. I didn't know anything about marketing, which is obviously very key online. So I read books on it. I watched videos. YouTube is, like we're on now, it's phenomenal for educating yourself. The more you could educate yourself and laser in on what you need in the business, the less you'll rely on other people. And the less you rely on other people, the more lean you are, and the better you can grow without taking massive cost burden on and stressing yourself with all the cost base. And then the other big thing is automate as much as you can. Pharma Place has no employees, right? It's got 850 pharmacies on board, about 450 brands, and with 0 employees. The system basically does everything automated. In a month, I'll kind of put down some hours to do the accounting bit of it and, paying suppliers, and maybe you'll deal with a few issues, but everything else goes through the system. Because when you see something that doesn't work and is consuming your time, there's generally a way to make sure that you can automate that. Just think about how you can do it. And then suddenly you're freeing up more of your time to add value and do the growth element. So I think those are 2 key areas I'd really get people to focus on, especially automation, because the more time you have, the more time you can do other things.
Okay, so I've just wrote a few things down. Just want to read them back to you, just a summary of our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So automate. Push yourself,
Yep.
Network, try everything, fail, learn, and keep going, and be risk averse.
Yep.
Before we go, is there one thing that you want to mention, if you want to say, maybe perhaps how people can find you or find more about your business?
Yeah, look, I'm on LinkedIn. If people want some help, again, message me. And always free to help people who need help, because again, over my career, there's always been people around. Again, like I talked about, the people in mining, or there's some people in oil and gas, or there's people in private equity. There's always been people who've helped me. and it's great to have that help. So if you want some advice, LinkedIn me, always happy to kind of push you in the right direction.
Wonderful. And I'll put the links below to two of your online businesses here in the UK, so people can also check that out. So
Super.
thank you so much for your time, and yeah, I'll see you around.
Cheers, Seth. Take care.